What about the exaggeration of hormone stability, which is part of your program? This is a very important piece because the changes in how these fractured and fragmented diets cause such, if you will, dysfunction and imbalance in some of the more important hormones that can also be growth factors and cancer promoters. Talk a little bit about that if you can.
Right, because we know that if you would have asked me, what's the most striking scientific findings from the last 5 years in the field of nutritional science, I'd have to say it's about protein. It's about showing that as animal protein is dialed up in the diet, we get more premature deaths, and how animal protein can modulate the aging process, where more animal protein makes for more rapid aging and less means for slower aging, while at the same time the studies show more plant protein makes for slower aging and affords people the opportunity to have a longer lifespan. So what these studies have shown is that we should be generally eating more plant protein and not more animal protein, but plant protein adequacy still plays a role here, and that means eating green vegetables, beans, and nuts and seeds, and not living on just a fruitarian diet, because the fruit is the only food that's low in protein in the natural plants. So we're saying here that it is important to eat vegetables, and most people should be eating beans or soybeans and other beans, and a variety of vegetables and green vegetables, which are very high in, are the richest source of the anti-cancer phytonutrients. And I have this acronym, which GBOMBS, which stands for greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, and seeds, just to document 6 foods that have so much scientific support to retard and prevent cancer. And so we're just keeping aware of these foods with a lot of scientific evidence to show the anti-cancer power of those foods. And when you put these foods synergistically together in a diet, then we have the most ability to prevent cancer, not just prevent heart disease. And of course, we're saying here that I mentioned animal protein when you asked me about hormones, because one of the reasons animal protein accelerates aging is by raising IGF-1 too high, which can accelerate, but of course, just eating more calories, too many calories can obviously raise your metabolic rate to age yourself faster too. And that if our diet is too deficient in protein, and other vegan and plant-based advocates say protein doesn't matter, and that it's just been over-exaggerated, but I'm saying no, that we want the protein to the diet, even though lowering animal protein is beneficial. If the diet is too low in plant protein, or if it's still too low in protein, IGF-1 in the elderly can drop too low, and that can still weaken immunity. So if the IGF-1 drops, so you can be on a vegan diet that's too low in protein, but people say, no, you can't, but you can. You can be eating, as you know, you could be eating too much white bread, or too much fruit, or too much, not having a well-designed diet with enough nutritional variety, with enough protein adequacy, and protein and complementary amino acids do have value. And that's so the studies are kind of reinforcing what we've been teaching people over the last 20, 30 years.
Well, what I like about one of the models and things that you've spoken about is that, the evidence base that has accrued over the years has vindicated the original, directives of hygiene about whole plant foods. That's one of the things that has only gotten stronger with the evidence base, while certain things like food combining and things like that from the past, of course, have been shown to not have the validity that, the founding fathers once did. I mean, they did the best that they could with the information at hand. But what I liked about some of what you wrote is this idea of synergy, the idea that you kind of refashioned food combining in the following way, that when you eat certain cooked things together, you are actually availing yourself of even greater nutrient availability because of those combinations. For example, beans and tomatoes and onions and mushrooms and things like that, when combined together, provide those powerful antioxidants and anti-cancer nutrients, even to a greater extent, by that synergy of taking them in together. So it's kind of a new model of food combining in a way that highlights the micronutrient availability. And I like that picture of that.
Yes,
you stand strongly behind that, right? That idea of that kind of combination synergizing the availability of micronutrients also.
Absolutely. And there's a synergy. And it also affects the microbiome, as you know, in the biofilm, which then keeps back to hormones again. which how it keeps your insulin and glucose absorption, the rate of glucose absorption through the gut wall, favorable, because you're a regular consumer of mushrooms and onions and beans and greens. So we're talking about raw greens and raw onions, raw, having the best effect on then cooked beans and cooked mushrooms. And when you have those two cooked foods and the two raw foods in your diet combined, you have the most favorable type of bacteria, of gram-positives, that adhere and stick to the villi to create a biofilm that now slows the absorption. When you had your mango in the morning, how do you make a moderately glycemic food like a mango be low glycemic? Because you ate your beans and your onions and your mushrooms, which made the glycemic load of the mango lower. And scientists call that the second meal effect. So yes, there's synergy with in the whole diet. This is why the keto people can't figure out with their continuous glucose monitoring, why they say, oh, I got to eat tuna fish and steak and cheese, because if I eat fruit like an oatmeal and mango, my sugars go through the roof. Well, your sugars go through the roof because your microbiome is bad and because you've distorted the shape of your insulin receptors from so much saturated fat in your diet. So there's a whole bunch of damage that occurs that makes them now react unfavorable to a normal glycemic food. They can't eat a tropical fruit or a bowl of oatmeal,
Yeah, I want to shift gears a little bit. Before I do, though, I just want to let people know where's the best place to find you online, Joe. What's the place you want them to go to find more about you and your information?
Well, obviously, drfuhrman.com, drfuhrman.com. And my most recent book with the most updated references is Eat for Life. So that's the most, it's always better to get the one with the more newer references and more references, because as you just said a few minutes ago, more evidence has corroborated these theories that we've developed over the years. And there's so much evidence, it makes it undeniable. If you really read it with all the evidence available, it makes it, undeniable and really hard to